Hello everybody, so today we're going to be reading The Consequences of Imagination's Fear. We are currently in chapter 3, but we're going to go back a chapter for the purpose of the recap. But instead of me giving you guys a recap, it's going to be Olly. Hop in, Olly.
Alright, hello everybody, it is me, Olly, again. I'm so sorry for the delay on this video. I really am. It really took longer than expected, and I kept pushing it aside thinking I could do it later, but instead I got all of this a mess, so we're gonna quickly do this. Recap of chapter 2. We had a really bad nightmare, woke up by alarm, had a somewhat normal morning, but when we went back to our office to edit some photos, the website was still open, and there was a note that appeared weirdly. And that note was, "I'm so happy to finally meet you, neighbor," which I'm pretty sure we all know who left that. But now we're on chapter 3, and the whispers, they grow.
You were frozen, heart pounding in your ears. The words were superimposed on your eyes, so bright it burned, so red you couldn't stand it. The spiral kept spinning, fading from darker to brighter. I do not know. Osculating you in size, calling to you. A line ever so slowly etched itself under the word you, underlining it with flourish. It was childish. The letters were nearly all uppercase in various degrees of crookedness. The eyes were backwards, and the eyes dotted with little hearts. There were doodles of smiley faces being drawn on the borders where there was still enough space. Their eyes had the same bloody red. The entire screen was filled with the message. It was chilling. You watched paralyzed as the words danced in your eyes. The spiral mist in your ears. Your hands were stuck, gripping the arms of your office chair, knuckles stretched pale and tendons sticking out. A tremor racked through your frame as you tried to look away, finding that you couldn't. You couldn't look away. There was a growing sound of static, fuzzy and muted, as if heard beyond a wall. With it came a steady series of thumps, pounding in the background. It was like a heartbeat, low and heavy, thundering in your skull. Your breaths came out as strangled pants, gasping for air as your mouth filled with cotton. Shakily, you forced your hand to move, gritting your teeth as it inched towards the laptop. Oddly, it was easier to move forwards if you only moved your hands towards the laptop touchpad. Otherwise, it felt like pressing against some massive wall of compact felt. It swallowed your hand, growing more resistant the closer your hands get. With a cry, you lunged forwards, feet stumbling and chest tight, and you slammed the laptop shut. The sound echoed throughout your apartment, bouncing off the walls and looping in your ears. You hadn't realized the weight of the air around you until it was gone. Skin no longer tingling, lungs no longer burning. Your breathing was still irregular, but it was returning back to normal. Without a pause, you snatched your phone and bolted, barely stopping to put on your shoes, before the front door slammed behind you. Your sneakers hit the ground with resounding thump, startling the birds into taking flight into the morning sky. The air tasted wet and smelt of dew and earth. Stumbling down the stairs onto the pathway from your home, you let out a sigh of relief. What the hell was that? You couldn't stop blinking, your eyes burning from being forced open, for however long you spent staring at that screen. one hand fidgeting with the bottom hem of your shirt, the other squeezing your phone tight. Both were shaking, outerline rushing through your veins. What the absolute hell had that been? You weren't one for believing in ghosts, not seriously at least. Ghost stories were fun to you, the possibility of life after death a curiosity. They were interesting to ponder, making you ask yourself what you'd do as a ghost. What would it even be like to be a ghost? But you dismissed the idea of ghosts based on two main circumstances. First, if everyone became a ghost, there simply would be too many ghosts on the planet. Did ghosts have a time limit? Were all ghosts living on slightly different ghostly realm overlaying the world? Do you stack atop one another? Surely only some people can become ghosts, or else there'd be centuries, millenniums worth of ghosts wandering about. And that got even more complicated if living things could become ghosts. If all living things could become ghosts. Secondly, if ghosts were real, surely they'd be able to tell people that, which the development of science, which was moving so fast nowadays, you stopped trying to keep up. Certainly someone would create a device
Of some sort, too.
allow ghosts to communicate. Although you mused, all the theories of what ghosts are capable are based off folklore. So it's entirely possible they communicate in ways we can't even understand. There was another reason why you didn't believe in them. You didn't want to be haunted. Someone maybe be a high school teacher once told you that the more you believe in something, the more likely it was to happen. Truthfully, you thought that was rubbish. A privileged perspective, at the very least, but after you binged a bunch of horror movies when you were younger, you accepted some of that advice. If you didn't believe in ghosts, they would have no power over you. It was clear that you were being haunted, but it begged the question, why you? And were you being haunted by a ghost? What sort of ghost mimicked the handwriting of a character from a franchise that maybe never even existed? Maybe your mother was right. You really were destined to drive yourself mad. Oh my God! Why would she say that? Too caught up in unwinding your emotional state after the whole fiasco, you hadn't paid your attention to where you were going. Fortunately for you, your feet led you down to a familiar path to the closest town and to your mentor's shop. Truthfully, it was the best outcome. Hopefully, it was a sign that the day was going to get better. At the very least, it couldn't get any worse. You felt the sense of comfort and at the familiar sight, your mentor, Rosie's artist shop, standing proud ahead. It was a converted house with 2 stories high and screaming warmth. The building was painted a bright red with white trim and borders, a style common in the area throughout the city you grew up in. The front had an entrance in the middle with the walls on each side, having large windows to show off most of the displays. The porch was larger than most, stretching the whole width of the building. There was a bench and complimentary seating on the porch, as well as a bowl of water for any animals that needed it. Of the overhang of the porch dangled wind chimes of all different styles, including a few handmade ceramic ones. Your favorite was in the shape of a small purple snake-like creature with cat ears, with a small glass bubble at the base. Made to catch the eyes of kids, you suspected. Overall, it was homely, a sort of place that seemed to have its own sort of magic, a charm that made the worries of the outside world fade away. You loved it here. And you were lucky enough that Rosie gave you the chance to sell your photography here with a bunch of other artists from the area. While not displayed in front of the windows, the two of you ended up making not just wall mountable prints, but also calendars of your photos, and with Rosie's insistence, a few notebooks with the photos plastered on the front. It might not be the most traditional job, but art was highly regarded in the area, and the tourists that came through loved to grab mementos too. It worked out, fortunately, because if you were being completely honest, you were never prepared to take on an actual job. Sorry, Mama. As you marched up to the door, you plastered on a smile, waving to a bunch of group of folks knitting together on the porch. The door swung open with a familiar ding, telling the world where you were. The familiar sight of artworks, from paintings to sculptures to pieces more abstract, filled your vision. And there was behind the front table sat Rosie. Her skin was dappled with age spots, freckles dusting her cheeks and arms. Her thick salt and pepper hair was tied up in a messy bun, odd strands sticking out and curling around her face. Her eyes, kind of crow-footed, were a dull sea foam today, contrasting her clay-toned skin. Her most standout feature was that she was wearing. Rosie was a special artist of all trades, but specializing in creating unique jewelry, which included that she currently had on. The thick silvery necklace decorated with a large dangling triangles, made of pieces of sea glass bordered with silvery metal. The bright orange, yellows, and occasional green went well with the shawl draped over her shoulders. Black shirt with loose and flowing. On her wrist were various bracelets, ranging from simple black cords to thick wood-carved ones. The sight of her brought a genuine smile to your lips. Nothing ever seemed too wrong when Rosie was around. She beamed as you approached, throwing her hands up in a welcome, the elaborate collection of jewelry jangling with the movement. She was already moving out from behind the counter to greet you. "Hey, Rosie," you drawled playfully and a sugary sweet. "I was wondering if I could ask a favor from you." "What? No hugs from your favorite artist?" She laughed, spinning to show off her handmade shawl. "What do you think of my newest piece?" In addition to making jewelry, Rosie was an accomplished crocheter. The shawl spoke of her skill, shaped into the spread-out wings of a giant crow. The feathers were a gradient of dark greens, blues, and purples, matching the oil spill effect the real birds had. The edges were decorated with a ridge of indent white, adding beautiful contrast. You returned her a hug as your mind drifted, flashing to the eyes to the red drawn message. Though you knew Rosie wouldn't be understanding, it hurt knowing you'd disappoint her. You couldn't help it. You looked up at her as a mentor. She had take you under her wing without judgment, after all. She believed in you when you'd lost direction in life. She filled the spot in your life as a nurturing figure you also craved for. Parents have never filled that role well. It's about the batch of photos you wanted. It turns out I'll need more time to finish them up. Her smile didn't falter, but the beat of silences made you queasy. "What is it this time? Not enough inspiration?" Rosie gestured out the window. She was teasing, but the world made you wince. The whole world is filled with beauty. Just look outside. You have to get out of that head of yours sometimes. It'll help motivate you, you know? It's not that this time, your face wavered. I actually took a surplus of photos this time around. So then what's the issue? You looked up with heating cheeks, gaze wondering. Remember that laptop I brought with me? What, did that dinosaur finally go extinct? She ruffled your hair fondly. Tutting, I think. I told you, that thing was on its last legs. I'm surprised it even managed to last this long. Well, in my defense, Hun, that thing was being powered through sheer will alone. You rolled your eyes. And stubbornness, don't forget that. You? Stubborn? No, it couldn't be. You both laughed, anxiety lifting. Rosie was a master of making people feel more at ease. The bizarre morning felt more and more like a dream, being forgotten, slipping sand in the eddies of your mind. This was the real world, here and now. You took a deep breath. The sun broke through the clouds outside, the warm golden light flooding the room through the large bay of windows. Even the weather was better. Everything would be okay. So, you spoke after you both stopped laughing. That kind of means I can't do anything and do any editing until I get myself a new laptop. Just promise me you'll get yourself a laptop from this century, okay? You can hold off on submitting your photos until then. It really wasn't that old. Rosie snickered at your words. You continued on, unfazed. Have I ever told you you're the best? You know it. Now you run off and get yourself all sorted out. She made a shooing motion with her hands, returning back to her spot behind the front table. You can't leave the people without any of your wonderful pieces for too long, you know. Constancy is a great strength to possess. Will do. I'll see you later, Rosie. The jingle of the door chime faded as you left the shop, now rejuvenated. You'd never been too good with confrontation, but with Rosie it was easy. Sure, you felt awful about missing the deadline, but it was no longer weighing you down. It was just unpleasant. Rosie's shop was still a walk away from the main downtown hub, isolated enough to give it a cottagey feeling without getting people lost. You really needed to check out the laptops on sale, so you decided to head downtown. Hopefully there would be some cheap laptops. The cheaper, the better, if you were being honest. Your bank account couldn't handle the expensive ones. Sure, the promise of high A performance and a light-up keyboard was extremely tempting, but your job wasn't too performance-heavy. Just some light touch-ups, cropping edges, or changing a few color values. Sometimes with the more experimental pieces, you'd add some neat effects. But that wasn't the bulk of your editing work. To waste time, you decided to take some photos with your phone. You followed the trail beside the main road, old railway tracks that had long since been out of use. Upkept by the community, you closed your eyes to listen to nature around you. Bird songs overlapped, twittering and whistles mixing with the rustling of leaves and occasional patter of squirrels. You could hear the rumble of cars on the main road and the roaring paired with the splash of tires running through the puddles. Your heartbeat slowed and mind cleared, lulled to rest by the world around you. Opening your eyes, you began to hunt for the best new photos. You took images of the field, still filled with fog, the wheat-like grass fading off into the distance, of birds that fluttered by, flapping wings captured spread wide, feathering gleaming with dewdrops, of late spring flowers in various stage of bloom, swaying in the wind. Pictures of the sky above where beams of sunlight danced between the splotches of blue peeked through clouds, of soft whites and grays, of the plants growing between the rustled metal of the old train tracks, wooden beams falling apart to time, and of little curiosities like leaving that grew in spirals and rocks and half-made circles. You even managed to catch some photos of a flock of sparrows flying in a group, each image capturing a different shape of the flock made. That had always fascinated you, how the little birds never seemed to hit each other, as if they knew where the next would be before it did. Rosie was right, the world was truly beautiful. And dirty, you noted, with a groan. Your shoes, simple sneakers, were partially covered with wet dirt. Your feet made odd thwopping noises with each step, the pebbles between the train tracks sticking to the soles, and the fog through nowhere to just be by the main roads was still nestled in the fog in the forest path, lightly damping your clothes, just enough to make it annoying. At least it wasn't raining. You were rarely at the town, now only a 20-minute walk from Rosie's. Typically, you would ride your bike, the far quicker option, but you left that morning in such a hurry that you simply forgot it. Since today was meant to be spent editing, which you could no longer do, you didn't have much else to do. So the long walk was rather nice. Italy decided to check the images you'd been taking. At first, you only paid attention to the actual images, pleased at the results. But soon you noticed something odd. The file names weren't the usual mix of numbers representing the date and the time. They were wrong, unsettling, alarming. Wrong. But familiar in the way that made your stomach roll and your heart skip a beat. 4E656696766F7572 3F2048 656C 6C 6F 3F. Eyes wide, you swiped to the next picture, finding the same thing had happened. You swiped. Again, you swiped. Again, and again. Panic gripped your lungs, a wave of nausea hitting you. Why wouldn't it stop? You shut off your phone and nearly throw it. Barely stopping yourself, it was official. You were haunted. Haunted by some weirdo ghost that only knows how to keyboard smash, apparently. How bizarre was that? And here you'd gotten your hopes up. Eternally, you beat back your fear with logic as your weapon. It had some sort of bug, or maybe your phone stopped formatting the title of images correctly. Your phone wasn't that old, but old enough that it was suspectful into a weird virus? It was internally possible. Viruses were real hard to deal with, but at least they were real, unlike ghosts. Your heart still fluttered in your chest, body both heavy and not as you make your way to the store. Maybe while you searched for a new laptop, you could ask the person there to check it out. That shouldn't be a big deal, hopefully. You really hoped it could be fixed. The nausea still remained deep-seated in your guts, forcing you to slow, gingerly as if it would grow teeth and bite you. You turned your phone back off, looking at it now, without the jolt of being caught off guard. It didn't seem that scary, just odd. Honestly, why would a ghost ever haunt you anyways? You're just being paranoid. I'm being so stupid over nothing. Quieter, you muttered. I should have really stopped watching those analog horror analysis videos before bed. Of course, your phone didn't respond. You chuckled at the absurdity of the situation. But the sound died as your phone buzzed in your hand. After you spoke, it was a notification. A small colorful envelope danced on top of your screen, made of a bold primary colors. It stayed where it should. At first, how notifications usually arrive on your phone, but it didn't leave. Shaking your phone buzzed again, another notification. You turned off your screen and shoved your phone into your pocket. It buzzed again. The vibrations traveling down your leg, and again, and again, and again, until it was constantly vibrating, desperate for your attention. The pounding fear of this morning came back. You didn't want to get sucked into that spiral again. You almost were sick. The phone started pinging, the last of the birds leaving the area. As the sound grew louder and louder, the forest was silent around you. Too silent. Or maybe your phone was too loud. Buzzing and chiming in your pocket, it grew too much, overwhelming your senses. If you were being haunted, the ghost was a full-on jerk. Finally, you pulled it out, the screen already on and shining at full brightness. Little run marks danced around the edges, as there was more writing, more of the same dreadful writing. As you read it, the phone stopped blaring, and the buzzing stopped, as if it knew you were squinting. It turned down the brightness level and turned its brightness level down to a comfortable level. The red letters pulsed on the screen, big and bold and demanding your attention. The words were simple, but they were random. It was just a message. It was a response to what you just said. Stop ignoring me. All right. Chapter 4, Counting Down the Reasons. In your hands was your phone, outstretched over the counter as the young man, a kid really, looked unconvinced. You want me to fix your phone? It looks fine to me. You groan. Usually when people ask for that sort of service, their phones are like wrecked, like absolutely totaled, non-functioning. And this puppy right here, he gestured to your phone, seems to be working as it should. Can't you look at it anyways? He leaned back, checking the clock. It was unknown to you. A Sunday, it wasn't uncommon for shops in town to be closed on Sundays. A tradition left over from people long gone. And this one wasn't. But by the way he was acting, eyes half closed, chin resting on his hand, before you started talking, he probably wished it was closed. You couldn't blame him, since you'd probably feel the same if you were in his shoes. But really, you really needed him to just check your phone. You ruled out haunting, as those seemed to be more physically based, not just through electronics and possession. Was it possible for electrical devices to be possessed? What was the difference between the two anyways? As far as you knew, possession was a ghost activity taking control, while haunting was more passive. You tried not to think about it. At any rate, you wanted it checked out to see if it was a virus before you went dousing in holy water. Phones aren't cheap. I'll tell you what, I'll do a quick courtesy scan to see if anything's bugging out. But shop closes in an hour and I want to leave early. Sounds good? Thanks. Be careful with it, though. Sighing, you hand your device over, feeling the odd old swell of discomfort as it leaves your grasp. He took it, swiping through main pages and checking what applications you had open. It was awkward standing there watching him shift through your phone. Your phone was your livelihood. Livelihood? I don't know. It was natural to feel protective of it, even if it felt more invasive than it should. He half-heartedly fiddled around with it for a few minutes. He turned it off to restart it, switched a few settings to test how they were working, and eventually seemed to settle for opening and closing various apps to see if they were crashing. Blowing strands of hair out of his eyes, he glanced between you and the phone before setting it down. I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong with your phone. Are you sure? You interrupted, edges of your vision getting blurry. It was doing all these weird things earlier. It wouldn't shut off, and no matter what I did, it wouldn't stop buzzing. And all the images are weird, and I really need it for work. And if it keeps doing this, I'll need to buy another phone. But I can't afford another phone and another laptop. Please, isn't there more you can do? It has to be broken in some way. It cannot be broken. His wide-eyed stare stopped your rambling, voice dying in your throat. The heat of unshed tears prickling at the back of your eyes, not yet dripping but threatening to. You mentally hate yourself. You had to pull it together. At your distress, though, he changed his tune, either out of pity or kindness. You couldn't quite say. His eyes were softer. Hey, you said it acted up when you looked at photos? Yeah? Mind if I take a few? You nodded, looking around the shop as he boosted himself to the task. The store was fairly standard office supply store with a section that you were currently in dedicated to electronics. There were a few rows of laptops, tablets, phones, and other small trinkets. Cables and accessories. The shelving was a head shorter than you, allowing you, if you wandered, to peer over the next aisle. The floor was squeaky under your shoes when you adjusted yourself, fighting the urge to hum as the clerk kept shifting his eyes to you, looking away when you caught his gaze. So you counted the amount of colors you could see, mentally cataloging them, comparing the contrast. The floor was an off-white tile fleckled with small gray marks, scuffed in parts and worn down near the entrance. It was a good neutral for the space. The shorter shelves and desks were simple constructions of white, maintaining the illusion of cleanness. Although, looking at some of the more neglected places, you could see the buildup of dust. The ceiling was less of a ceiling and more of an exposed space, showing the old beams and ducts keeping the place running. The lights, long floor-scented, remain scent of those you had in your past schools, dangled several feet above the ground. This made the space above dark, the only light illuminating reflections of the world beneath it. And there was a final detail that made you lose count. Red. It was everywhere. On the beams of the tallest metal-framed shelves, on the small carpet by the entrance. It was accented in thick stripes on the clerk's counter, and used as a background color in promotional advertisements up in the front windows. His uniform was red and a black back, even his name tag. The name itself, too poorly written to be legible, was bordered with red. It was all red. That same red. You swore that it hadn't been like that last time. Unless it had to be blue or green or even a less common orange, not red. It was too much red, too much of a reminder. Turning away from the clerk, you tapped a rhythm on your thigh with your fingers to keep yourself calmed down. Glancing at the section of chairs on the wall furthest away from you, you counted the numbers of black chairs, brown chairs, and the number of chairs you'd expected hardcore gamers to have. 6, 3, 4 more chairs than you expected. You jumped when a hand grabbed your shoulder. So I went through and checked all the pictures I took, and there's nothing wrong with them. Like you mentioned, the file name formatting was like jumbled, right? Messing with your work or something? He paused, waiting for you to nod. Yeah, well, from what I've seen, it's all normal. Either you downloaded these pictures or renamed them yourself. There's not much other explanations. At your gloomy look, he winked, an impish looking curling his face. If you really wanted to hang out, all you had to do was ask. Your cheeks warmed up as he laughed, as you stuttered a response. Mine busy elsewhere. His teasing look faded, and his prompt for you to take the phone was left untaken. If you really think it'll help, I can hook it up to you, scan it. That'll cost you some, though. It was tempting, far too tempting. But the moment you saw that the connection cable, your heart lurched, skipping a beat. Your mind flashed back to that computer, the hypnotizing spiral that made you so weak. Your phone had, until it was connected, been completely normal before the moment you looked around at all the computers here. All of the different phones on the table. You couldn't risk it. Shaking your head wildly, you mutter an excuse. He was obviously confused, already asking if you were all right. As you yanked your phone away from him, you bolted. Wow, okay, yeah, we're running up on out of there. Steeling yourself, you decided to go through the images the clerk had taken. The first image that appeared when you opened the app was normal. It was a blurry image of the counter, a finger-covered part of the lens that The shadow seemed odd, but you shrugged it off. Might have been some specks of dust, nothing too alarming. You could fight off the slimy feeling growing in your chest when you looked at the next picture. It was simple. One of the store entrances, glass doors. At time aim signage, standing proud next to an empty cashier counter. But the sign, what was supposed to be black with white text showing the open and closed time, it had changed. Over it was a doodle. It was simple. Red. 24/7. The next few pictures were similar, with tiny doodles that hadn't been there when he took them, sparely decorating them. The one that stood out the most beyond the number of question marks pointing to a certain object was a selfie the guy took. Covering most of the screen was a bold red letters, a simple question. It was enough to make you shut your screen and put it down. Ho! You shivered, hand wrapped around your middle in facsimile of a hug. Your stomach rolled with a realization that your skin feels too tight. Hands clammy, you tried to keep walking normally until you could reach somewhere more private, not wanting people to watch as you struggled with the emotional tornado wrecking your mind. That implied that it knew what you looked like, and you very, very much did not like that idea. And that was an understatement. The knowledge that it knew what you looked like made you feel like throwing up. Your brain was stuck on the fact, like it was a splinter wedging itself deeper and deeper into the folds of your very being. It knew you. It was watching you. Your steps were uneasy as you automatically made your way back to the trail to your home. You couldn't escape the thoughts. How long had it been waiting? Was it watching right now? Did it ever stop watching? What did it specifically want? What did it want from you specifically? Why did it only want to see you? You shuddered, feeling the prickle of being spied on, being stared at. It sunk into the back of your neck, remained there no matter where you looked. Where you turned, paranoia was growing, gripping your shoulders tighter and tighter, higher and higher. Your heart thudded in your ears, constant drumming like a ship off to war. The phone kept buzzing, occasionally chirping for your attention. It wouldn't stop. You could picture in your mind what it would be like to tell someone about it. Tell them that there was this thing too reactive to be a virus that kept talking over your phone. Automatically, your mind supplemented the other person with the store clerk you just fled from. Oh, hey, want to talk to the demon in my phone? It won't leave me alone. Humorously, your brain continued. Humorously, your brain continued with the scenario. Mental image of the man, jovial, and unconcerned. His words were oddly granting, the banter bitter in your mouth. How joyous for you both. Sadly, we cannot help you here, but I bet the church could help. Even if I'm not a churchgoer, especially if you're not a churchgoer. It's a 2-for-1 deal for them. He howled as your brain scenario was interrupted with a buzz. Not again. Glancing down, you saw red-edged words taunting you. It was paired with a little drawing of a sad face, the left eye larger, as if the person drawing it stabbed the spot for emphasis. Where had that been when the clerk had your phone? Why were things different when he had looked? That wasn't you. The message dissolved as another took its place. Another face doodled on. This one was similar, only a tear added to the sad face. I missed you. Frustration welled up in place as terror. Okay. Frustration welled up in place of terror as you slammed your finger into the screen, poking it over and over. You let the action consume you. It helped you release your anger, your fear, your hatred for this stupid situation that shouldn't be physically possible. There was even another person who should have been a witness, but the issue mysteriously vanished. It was almost enough for you to think yourself mad. Almost, but not quite. Because the clerk did see the file name change, even if it stopped happening when he took new photos, which meant that it wasn't entirely in your head. Not quite. Not yet. But that also meant it couldn't be a virus, because what sort of virus can detect who is using the phone? None? A hacker, maybe? You clung to whatever logic you could to face in face of the absurd. Your poking slowed as your mind wandered, emotions fading, as you tried to piece together the clues you ignored. Ignored for a reason. That was because as much as you told yourself that it was all random, logical, stupid, little coincidences, your heart knew better. There was a pattern, faint and dull, like footsteps left in the snow near a trail of a blizzard. Indents whose existence proved meaningful while giving only the vaguest of details. Nothing about who or what left the prints, nothing about why they led the way they did, or even which way was forwards. It was kind of like that, but in this case, you felt like you knew who the who was. But it was ridiculous, preposterous, ludicrous even. But more so than that, it was absolutely unbelievable. And yet, it made sense, the most twisted of ways. Did you dare think it? With a shuddering breath, you looked down, ready for what was to come. Your chest still puffed as you fought off a new wave of panic, the phone beginning to buzz again. Reawakened after the prodding you put it through. Your muscles were stiff, jaw aching from being clenched tight. A new message appeared. As letters expected, yet the sight of red-marked letters still made you falter. Truly, it was the worst color that could have been chosen. Red repents danger, aggression. It repents fire that's scorched without reason, blood that pools without warning. That represents power, the power to control. It's the color with the shortest wavelengths, the most obvious and eye-catching. It's demanding and intrusive, and it made the words scream in your mind. The sort of wail that made your blood rush and hackles raise survival instincts, scratch and kick. But red also represents love and passion through loath and admit and but red also represents love and passion through loath to emit the currently. It represents unfiltered sweetness, candied apples, and wrapped hearts, both wearing the color proudly. It stood for good luck and strength, and a sign that good things could come, if only you were to open to it. It was a color that stood for confidence, for it had nothing to hide. Personally, in this context, the red represent intention for the plea for it. You flexed your fingers and flicked the screen towards you. Reading the messages that seemed to flood in. I know you're there, neighbor. That wasn't nice. Where did you go? I can see you. Stay here. You swallowed down a lump in your throat. Paranoia was an angry beast in your stomach, growling and clawing, shredding your insides. It paced, a tiger too small for its cage, writhing with teeth like steel knives, sinking in, injecting more fear. You beat it off with measured breathing as you read the next message, one you'd seen before. Stop ignoring me. There was a pause, the individual letters dancing on the shadowy black background, cheerful despite how anonymous it was. The letters faded as a new message appeared, slowly printed as if by hand. You couldn't fight the knowledge that you recognized that handwriting. You had seen it. You knew who it belonged to. Still, the more hints that proved that the owner of the handwriting might actually be the thing behind this, the more you didn't want to think about it. The next message was ready. Please answer me. The please was steadily repeated in the blank space, filling up the void. The letters overlapped each deteriorated into scribbles. All you could see was red. It's everywhere, drawing you in, filling your eyes with, filling your soul. It tasted of 2 old apples, of fruit left to rot. It smelled like dust and sharply metallic and how it flooded your system, making your eyes wince and stomach roll. It felt like loneliness, deep-rooted sadness. It was a reflection of your own fear, distorted in its origin. It feared not what could happen, not like you. Instead, it feared something else, something you hadn't thought of until now, where it now roars for you to listen. It feared something that had already happened, and it knew the cost of ignorance. You didn't notice the eyes forming into a jumble of lines, little eyes of black scleras and red pupils peering out at you. There were hungry pupils, quivering. They absorbed the sight of you, of the sight around you, eating away at the light, hitting the screen. They couldn't focus, chomping down bits of the sky, grazing on leaves of the trees. They simply couldn't help themselves. They were absolutely starving. Oh my god, we made it, guys. Sorry for the stuttering, and if I mispronounced anything, I am so sorry. Thank you for letting me read, and again, I am so sorry this came out late, but